What's the craziest food you ate?
Squirrel. I had squirrel in West Virginia. There's squirrel season from June to October, and it was great. It was like chicken, but really greasy. I mean, I wouldn't make it for myself, but it really wasn't bad.
Crazy experience.
I was at a bus stop in Baltimore with my companion, and it was getting dark, and we were kind of scared because you don't want to be in the city when it's dark. And we had crossed the street to take a picture of the skyline in the sunset because we were waiting and we had like an hour to kill because the buses on Saturdays were like almost non-existent. It was really hard on Saturdays. And so we had crossed the street, and as we were across the street and we needed to get back, we realized that there was a car parked that was an undercover cop car. And they saw us jaywalk, and we were like, well, jaywalk back and possibly get ticketed, or don't jaywalk back and possibly miss a bus that might come if we walk all the way down the block to the crosswalk and walk back. So we just jaywalked back, and they got on their intercom and were like, walk across the street again. And we were just laughing and kind of just messing with us. And so we're waiting at the bus stop, and the bus pulls up, and they waited for us the whole time just to make sure we were safe. And the bus pulls up, and we just waved and we're like, thanks, and got in the bus. And the bus driver, she was an African-American woman, and she was furious. Like no fury I had seen on my mission. She was so mad. And I just was very confused at first. I was like, what is wrong? And she starts ranting and raving about how the cops wouldn't wait for two black girls and that two white girls didn't deserve to be protected in this city. And she was furious. And it was the first time I'd ever experienced like reverse discrimination, I guess, or discrimination for being white and for being a woman. I was just like, it blew my mind because it wouldn't have even occurred to me, like color wise. I was like, I'd just be grateful that they were protecting two women, you know? And she was so mad. And I was very afraid that we would get off the bus and the whole bus heard her. It was not a secret. And we just sat there just mortified, didn't know what to do. And we were afraid that somebody would get off the bus and show us that the cops couldn't take care of us and that we would be robbed or worse that day. And so we ended up just saying a quick prayer, and we got off the bus, and a man got off the bus with us, and he stopped us and he was like, I'm ashamed for her. I'm sorry that she did that to you. And then just walked away, and we were like, oh. And we were able to walk home safe, but that was crazy.
What was the greatest life lesson you learned?
I would say to be quick to observe. I think I learned that from the moment I got the prompting to serve a mission, but it was just further and further reinforced as I got promptings that were sometimes ridiculous, like stopping a man who was crying over his dead cat on the highway because it had been hit by a car, and being like, what can we do to help you? You know, and teaching him and things like that. And just being willing to be quick to observe any prompting that you get and not fighting with the spirit like I sometimes do. But having a willingness to be open to that, because I just learned that I don't know why I trust myself to orchestrate my life correctly when someone who is fully aware of every circumstance in my life and every possibility could have so much better control. And so just being willing to obey immediately and with exactness.
What was the best skill that you gained as a missionary?
Probably being open. Just being able to express what I need and to have expectations for other people to express what they need. I think just communication skills were huge. And I've seen that in relationships that I've had since, and just being able to admit my weaknesses and to be able to work on them in a way that's open. I think for a long time I really struggled with letting people see my imperfections. I wanted to be able to do everything I could to hide them and to control them so that I came off as being perfect, or as perfect as I could. I mean, I'm sure people saw plenty of flaws that I just wasn't able to hide. But I think being okay with being imperfect, and that I don't need to be perfect to have an influence and to be good and to do those things. And so I think communication was a huge part of that, just being vulnerable.
What was the hardest experience you went through?
There was a time on my mission where some of the missionaries that I was living with and that I was surrounded by weren't being obedient. And I was in a leadership position at the time. I was sister training leader with my companion. And so we were bringing sisters into the apartment that we were living in that we were training to be more obedient and to show what missionary work should look like. And the sisters that we were living with weren't upholding the standard that was appropriate for a circumstance like that. And we had gone to our leadership, the elders that were district president or district leader and zone leaders, and didn't receive the support that we felt was necessary for a circumstance like that. And so a lot of things ended up happening, and it wasn't nothing severe enough to be detrimental to their salvation happened, but mistakes were made, pretty big mistakes. And it was hard because we didn't have the support from our leadership. And I think I don't blame them in the sense that I have hard feelings or I think they were terrible missionaries or anything like that, because everybody makes mistakes and everybody has a lot to learn. And it taught me that I needed to remember that they were 19-year-old boys that were trying to do something really important and maybe had no examples as to how, and things like that. But I think the hardest thing was not being able to do kind of my job as a missionary because the people around me weren't upholding their calling. And that sounds kind of critical, and I don't mean it that way, but it taught me that I needed to be and live as the missionary that I expected others to live as. And it showed me how important obedience was, that it was just crucial. And I learned a lot from that, and I'm friends with a couple of the people that were involved still. It didn't ruin things necessarily, but it was a struggle. That and being tired. I was tired all the time, and it was just unbelievable. So that was hard for me too. But those two things, I think. Take naps during lunch. It's okay to take naps during lunch. If your mission president says it's okay. My mission president did. But we were so tired all the time that just having a 20-minute power nap was perfect because it gave us energy to go throughout the rest of the day. And then the other, for those preparing, study the Bible. You need to have an understanding, and you need to have a testimony of the Book of Mormon. But I got so far with people because I knew what they loved. I knew that they already loved the Bible, and I knew why, because I learned to love the Bible and to study the Bible. And I wasn't familiar with the Bible before my mission, really. I had some basic understanding, but I couldn't tell you, what Genesis was as compared to Deuteronomy or anything like that. And so having an understanding of both the Old and New Testament was really beneficial for me.